Just in time for wedding season, today I'm going to show you how to make a pin-on corsage, a wrist corsage, and a nosegay for all the special ladies who are going to be going to your wedding, and all for under $10. Hi, welcome to another video. We're going to first start out with a traditional pin-on corsage for mother of the bride, mother of the groom, grandmother of the bride, whatever lady you want to signify in your wedding. What we're going to start with are a few stems of this beautiful tournament of roses rose. Now, obviously, I just cut these from the garden, but you can definitely buy a bunch of spray roses or regular roses from Trader Joe's or Safeway, and the amount of materials you're going to use is going to be like less than $5, I promise you. I like the tournament roses because it has various stages of bloom, and that makes a really beautiful corsage. That's why I like using spray roses. Now you can buy a bunch of spray roses from Trader Joe's for $5.99, and they come in a lot of different colors. Today we're going to use this kind of salmony pink. So another reason why I chose this rose is because it has very hardy, leathery petals that holds up really well out of water. What we're going to do is do the traditional wire and taping of this rose. In addition to the roses, I bought a small bunch of baby's breath from Trader Joe's for $3.99, and we're going to use that for the corsages. And you only need a little tiny bit of it, as well as some novelty greenery I cut from the garden. I have an assortment of greenery, but I think we're going to be using the Dusty Miller today. Okay, so let's get started with the wiring and taping. What I'm using is 22 gauge wire. 22 gauge wire and 24 gauge wire are generally my go-to for wire and taping for corsages and boutonnieres. I'm going to select a rose that's slightly open. That's going to be our open rose. We don't want the corsages and boutonnieres to be too huge. And then I'm just going to tape it. What you do is you secure the tape to the rose and the wire. You're going to wind it like this. And then to wind it down the stem, instead of doing this the whole way, you pull the stem kind of vertical, the tape vertical, and lay it against the stem, twist. And that's fast, and you use less tape, and that's the way the pros do it. Okay, then I'm going to cut a large bud. Tape that as well. Now, floral tape is just a sticky wax on this kind of papery tape. And if you pull it open, it's stickier. So definitely pull it open as you work. Stretch it open and it'll be stickier. So once again, I'm affixing it to the base of the rose. And then when I get down to just the wire part, I just pull it vertical and lay the wire vertical on the tape. Use less tape and less time. Okay, I've got two roses here, and I'm going to use another sort of a bud type rose, like this size bud. When I'm doing weddings, I always tell my clients to select sort of a neutral color for the corsages so that last minute we're not trying to figure out what color each lady is wearing. So we usually default to white or pale blush, something like that, so that makes your life easier. Those of you who are doing events, don't give them too many choices. Keep it simple. So we're going to wire some of these little buds to use. Now the wire I'm using comes in 18-inch lengths, so I usually cut them in half because for boutonnieres and corsages, you don't need that much, that long a wire, right? It's a waste of resources and time. Okay, so I'm going to cut another bud to use. Now we charge for corsages, pin-on and wrist corsages, anywhere between $35 and $50. So those of you who are in the business know that personal flowers are the most profitable part of an event because the flowers you use are very limited. There's not that many stems that you're using, but there's a big profit margin on these. But it's sort of somewhat labor intensive, but I don't mind doing it. Usually I save the corsage and boutonniere work for the end of the day when I'm really tired and been on my feet for 6-7 hours. Then I could just sit down and put on a show from Netflix and just wire and tape. Okay, have another little bud. So this is sort of like, you want to have everything prepped. Oh, it's hard to poke it in. There we go. For your corsage before you start assembling it. Kind of like doing mise en place for cooking. Have everything prepped before you start assembling your flowers into a corsage. What I'm going to show you is kind of a basic, corsage. And then the greenery I've chosen to use today is not actually green. It's side leaves from Dusty Miller because I thought it would be pretty to have that grayish silver with this salmony pink. So I'm just going to pull some leaves off of the Dusty Miller to use. And the accent flower, we're just going to go with Classic Baby's Breath. It lasts well out of water. It's lightweight, and it's a nice neutral white. These are the things to consider when you're using accent flowers for boutonnieres and corsages. Lightweight is important, has to look nice for many hours out of water, and kind of a neutral color, just to give it a little interest and dimension. You don't need to add like a big, stylistic impact. And I have pre-made sort of a sheer silvery gray bow for this corsage. So I have all my elements laid out in front of me, and I'm going to go ahead and assemble the corsage. So I'm going to start with the larger roses on the bottom, kind of at a diagonal. Then I'm going to add in smaller roses as we get to the top. Okay. Then I'm going to add a little bud at the very tip top. And since I have 2 buds, I might just add one somewhere else, maybe here in between. Then I'm going to add in the Baby's Breath. Now, if you are a new florist, you might want to tape it off, as you add in things, because you're not as experienced in holding so many elements together. So you could tape it off at any juncture. Just tape it off. You can reshape it in your hand a little bit, and then you can add in more elements so that you're not, getting a cramp in your hand trying to hold all the stuff together. Then I'm going to add in the Dusty Miller kind of in the back. Just kind of sets off the flowers. And it adds a really pretty velvety, lacy texture to it. Then we're going to add in our bow at the base. Now, I have been to weddings where, I drop off the corsage and boutonnieres, and then I see, later on that the ladies have put the corsages on backwards, like upside down. I don't know if that's an old-fashioned thing where they used to wear the corsages like this. It drives me kind of crazy when I see that. Okay, I think that's pretty nice. You just compose in your hand. You can kind of, rejigger it after it's been taped off. Okay, and then I'm going to tape it off. I don't like to leave a really long stem on the corsages. I just think, a little bit shorter is better. You can see just a little bit of the stem, not a lot. So I'll cut it off. It's about 2, maybe 1.5 inches. And I like to finish the boutonnieres and corsages off the stem with satin ribbon. So this is a thin satin ribbon 5/8 inch width. I have these in all sorts of colors to match different jackets, and I'm using a kind of silvery pale gray on this to match our silvery pale gray bow, and also to sort of bring out the grayish dusty miller. And to affix the ribbon to the stem, I have these 1/2 inch pearl pins. These are wonderful. They're indispensable. I buy them from a floral supply store. They have a pearl head and it's a 1/2 inch pin, and we use it to affix ribbon to on bridal bouquets and corsages. And here you have it, a very traditional pin-on corsage. I'm going to pin it on the mannequin so you can see what it looks like on a jacket. And I'll give you a trick on how to pin corsages. The trick is to use 2 pins, not 1. And you don't want to go horizontal through the stem. What you want to do is do 2 pins vertical up into the corsage, hopefully into one of the roses, but at least through the stem. That way the 2 pins anchor your corsage so that it doesn't swivel back and forth on a jacket. See, 2 pins up and into the stem and head of the rose. And that affixes it to the lapel securely without it swiveling. And next I'm going to show you how to make a wrist corsage. Now with wrist corsages, we've done them many ways in the past, wire and tape, and as well as glue. I find that gluing it securely to a wristlet is the best way to do it. It's lightweight and it's not so bulky as wire and taping. Now, these are really nice wristlets I found on Amazon. I will put all the materials I'm using in this video in a link in the description below for those of you who want to use this. This is less expensive than similar wristlets I found at the flower market, and the great thing is it's got kind of a pretty elastic pearl bracelet part, and the little I don't know how to call this, the little placard here, the little base here is nice and large and stiff, so it gives you a great place to glue your materials. So what we're going to start with is a bow. I just made a small bow using 5/8 with chiffon ribbon in a kind of an off-white, and it's just wired with a white covered wire. We're going to poke it diagonally through the holes that are on this little base here, and this is going to be kind of the center of our corsage. Now, wrist corsages can be clumsy because, you know, people have to move their hands, right? So I'm always aware of how it will affect the wearer of the corsage, and I don't want to make it too big, and I definitely don't want it to be really heavy. And that's why we're not doing a lot of wire and taping. We're going to do everything with glue. Now, the indispensable tool that I'm going to be using today is the Oasis Floral Adhesive. I'm going to of course, link this in the description below because this is the glue. I don't know if anything else works, but this is an amazing glue for fresh flowers. What you glue on, I guarantee you, will not come off. You can mist it. You can put it in the fridge. It won't, lose its stickiness. And so don't try it with anything else. You don't want it falling apart on the day of the wedding. And another thing is you want to have a work surface that's covered because this glue could be kind of messy. So I like to actually just use the cellophane that comes with flowers. So I'm just going to spread out the cellophane that came with the baby's breath. And what I'm going to do is build a base with a little bit of foliage on here so that we can glue the flowers on there and cover sort of this little plastic base here. What I have are some gardenia foliage. Now, my husband was fixing the valves of our sprinklers yesterday, and he cut a lot of my gardenias with buds on them. I almost had a heart attack. But today I'm going to use some of the foliage, at least in the corsage. Gardenia foliage is wonderful to use in boutonnieres and corsages because it's really glossy and green, and it lasts really well out of water. It's just a really beautiful, beautiful foliage. So I'm going to use some of these that he cut when he was fixing the valve of our sprinkler system. Okay, cut some foliage here. And I'm going to cut the bottom of the leaves shorter because we don't want this base to stick out too much. I'm always, trying to make sure that the corsages that I make, the wrist corsages, are sort of low profile and not too big around so that, the mother of the bride, the grandmother of the bride, whichever lady's wearing it doesn't feel like they're wearing this huge clumsy thing. And every time they gesture or they, put their hair behind their ear, they're not like having this huge thing wobble around on their wrist. Okay, so I've just cut the leaves, the base of the leaf off a little bit, so it's a little shorter. And I'm not sure which ones I'm going to use yet, but I've got an assortment of sizes here. And we're going to go ahead and use our floral adhesive. Now, instead of putting it on the leaf, I'm going to put some on the base here. I always have extra tubes of this in my toolbox in case anything falls off, but nothing has ever fallen off. So I have some floral adhesive here. I'm just going to add in a few leaves for the base. Not a lot, just a couple leaves here. And I'm going to do the same on this side because remember our bow is sort of the middle of our corsage. It's very messy. I should wear gloves, but oh well. Okay. Okay, so we have like a little bit of a greenery base. We're not going to see too much of it. And then we're going to add in these little white roses. Now, I cut these white roses from my garden. This is that landscape rose called White Maitland. And it's just basically a beautiful white spray rose. And of course, if you're not growing this in your garden, you could just buy a bunch of white spray roses from somewhere like Trader Joe's. I saw them for $5.99 a bunch. Now for $5.99, you can make, I don't know, 5 or 6 ladies' corsages from a bunch of white spray roses. So it's very inexpensive to do, but it's a lot of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut these roses off. I like these because there's so many different sizes of blooms, like little tiny buds, slightly more open buds, and tighter buds. We're just going to cut a bunch of these off. And I'm cutting these really, really short because remember, we want to keep the profile kind of low on the wrist corsage so that the wearer doesn't feel like they're wearing this big, heavy corsage. And sometimes the sepals get in the way, so I'll just like pull them off. And then you don't need to be perfect. It's okay if it's a little bit messy because no one's going to see the underside. And then just put some glue at the base of each blossom. Now, often this glue sets up nicely, so you could put some glue on and set the rose down, and then go back to it in a few minutes. So what I'm going to do is just put glue on the base of all these roses. I'm not even sure if we're going to use all of them or if we're going to have to add some, but I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on most of these roses. You can definitely do this with small orchids, like dendrobium orchids. You can buy, big stems of it and use the florets individually. That would be really beautiful corsage also. And dendrobium orchids, like roses, will last really well out of water. That's one of the main criteria of the material you select for corsages and boutonnieres and any personal flowers because they're going to be out of water, so you need to select something that can hold up well out of water. Same with your filler flower. You want something that's lightweight and neutral and will hold up well out of water. That's why we use a lot of baby's breath, wax flower. I might use rice flower on this one, even daintier than baby's breath. Okay, so I've got all the glue on the roses, and I'm just going to take the roses and kind of compose it on this corsage base here. See, it glues right onto the leaf. I'm just going to add it to both sides. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, but I want the visual weight to be somewhat equal, so you don't have like one side a lot bigger than the other. Maybe a little rosebud on the center here. Another pretty one over here. A bud here. A little bud here. Okay. Just kind of hold it a little bit. Let's see, do we have space for one more rose here? Yeah, maybe right here. So I just made a kind of a rosette shape with a little bit of the ribbon showing through, not a lot. Don't want it to be too old-fashioned with a giant ribbon, and a little bit of the greenery peeking out of the bottom. Just gonna let it dry for a minute, just let it set for a minute here while I go get some rice flour. I bought a bunch of rice flour from Trader Joe's, 5 stems, and it's also only $3.99, very inexpensive. And I'm just gonna take little bits from this here to use. So you don't even need, probably don't even need a whole stem of rice flour, just a few sprigs. Then we're gonna add some glue to it. Then we're just gonna add it kind of in between the roses as a little filler. Isn't that cute? So frilly and pretty. I love rice flour. So pretty and lacy and dainty. Doesn't add any weight hardly at all to this corsage, which is what we're going for. Okay. See if we need another little sprig somewhere here. See, we still have a whole stem of rice flour left, even though we cut a few sprigs from it. If anybody has ever worked in a flower shop, you know you don't need to destroy a whole stem. You just take a little from each stem, and then you still have the whole stem to use in arrangements or bouquets. I'm just tucking it all around so that it has a little more dimensionality. I think that's pretty good. And then I have these little crystals. You can buy little things like this in craft stores. I have these sprigs of crystals I got from the flower market. I might just cut a couple of crystal sprigs to add to our corsage to give it a little interest and a little bling. You can glue that in. See these really pretty little teardrop crystals? You can also buy little jewels, you know, different things you want to put in there, rhinestone sprays. Okay, do a third one here, just because I don't want to have two, make it look like antlers. Let's do a third crystal sprig. And these crystal sprigs are great because they are lightweight and they're wired, so you can kind of put them however you want. This one might stick up a little too much. Let me put it like a little further in the bouquet. The little corsage here. There we go. Okay, and we are mostly done. Got a dainty, beautiful little corsage made only with glue. Here we have it, a finished wrist corsage, and I'm going to model it for you. It's nice. I like that it doesn't have a high profile. It's very dainty and lightweight, and it's easy to wear. And this is a beautiful and traditional corsage for mom of the bride, mother of the groom, grandmothers, whatever lady you want to signify in your wedding party. So now we've got our pin-on corsage, our wrist corsage, and then we have another project, which is a nosegay bouquet, an alternative floral token for a special lady in the wedding. I'm going to show you how to make a modern and sleek nosegay that can be used instead of a corsage. We're going to use today our white mini calla lilies. Really beautiful, clean lines, and it's a super easy design. This is a bunch of little white mini callas. There's 8 stems here, and I'm just going to kind of arrange it in my hand in a pretty pattern, so that when I say pretty pattern, I just kind of mean that they're kind of in a circle. Since they're somewhat directional, you don't want them to all be facing the same direction. So I'm just going to kind of group it in my hand and create sort of a pretty little nosegay like this. And I'm just going to tape it off at the neck. And you don't have to go all the way down. I'm just going to do about 1 inch of tape right here, because we're going to hide this tape joint here with orchids. What I have here are 4 green cymbidium orchids. And what we're going to do is place it around the neck of the bouquet. And then you're going to use your floral tape again and tape the orchids in place. So the orchids are essentially hiding the first row of tape that we've used to secure our calla lilies in place. And I'm going to tape it so that the short stems of the orchid are completely covered. So you already see the type of bouquet we're going to be making. You're going to make sure your orchids are placed where you want them to be. And then we're simply going to hide the tape with ribbon. I've got a white ribbon here, a number 9 white ribbon. Kind of a pretty subtle natural white, not too white, not quite ivory. And of course you could do any color you want. We're going to cover the tape that we put to secure the orchids. But instead of going all the way down the bouquet, I'm just going to keep the tape short and up top, because I think it's pretty to see the lines of the natural stems of the calla lily. Such nice, neat stems in that beautiful pale green. Cut off your ribbon. Tuck the raw edge inward. Just kind of fold it in. And then you can secure it with short pearl pins. These short pearl pins are what we use to secure ribbon onto hand-tied bouquets. And you could just create a pattern of little pearl buttons down the length of the ribbon. And then you could cut these stems a little bit shorter and neater. What I do is just kind of, there's sort of a, a good proportion to use is you have your hand and you want to have a few inches left. So I think I'm going to cut it about here, not too short. And that's it. Super easy to do. This will last out of water for many hours because calla lilies last well out of water and orchids do too. So this is something that I've made often for the mother of the bride. Actually, for my own mother, for my wedding almost 30 years ago, we made a nosegay bouquet because she chose to wear a dress that was knit, a drapey knit, so it wasn't appropriate to pin a corsage on. So here we have a modern, sleek alternative to the corsage. I hope you enjoyed today's video and you learned something. It's going to save you a lot of money. So for under $10 and probably more like $3 or $4 per corsage, you can make these $35 to $50 corsages and nosegays for the mother of the bride, mother of the groom, grandmothers, or whatever lady you want to signify in your wedding. As always, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.